In April 2026, a cruise ship departed the harbor of Ushuaia, Argentina. On board were 150 passengers and crew from 23 different countries, beginning what was meant to be a luxury voyage through the South Atlantic. The route took them toward the remote islands of Antarctica. Within days, the ship was physically isolated, hundreds of miles from the nearest hospital or modern medical facility. 5 days into the trip, a 70-year-old Dutch passenger reported to the ship's doctor with a fever, headache, and mild diarrhea. Within 48 hours, he began struggling for every breath. On April 11th, the passenger died. Despite their best efforts, the onboard medical team couldn't identify the cause of such a rapid respiratory collapse. Most of the passengers remained unconcerned, continuing to socialize and dine together. They had no way of knowing that a lethal pathogen was already circulating within their closed, floating environment. 2 weeks later, the victim's wife disembarked at St. Helena and traveled to South Africa. On April 25th, she collapsed at the airport in Johannesburg and died the following morning. Back on the ship, the situation escalated. A German woman fell ill on April 28th and died just 4 days later, followed by a wave of new infections among the remaining travelers. On May 2nd, the World Health Organization was notified. After conducting urgent tests, they identified the killer, the Andes strain of Hantavirus. This is a pathogen with a 50% mortality rate. It has no vaccine and no known cure. It essentially causes the lungs to fill with fluid, leading to death by suffocation. This diagnosis left investigators with a massive problem. Hantavirus is typically an animal-borne disease. They had to explain how a virus carried by rodents was spreading through a luxury ship in the middle of the ocean. Scientists first encountered this family of viruses during the Korean War in the 1950s. Over 3,000 soldiers suddenly developed internal bleeding and kidney failure. The symptoms were so brutal and the casualties so high that military doctors initially suspected they were witnessing the effects of a new chemical weapon. It took 30 years to find the source. In the 1980s, a South Korean virologist traced the disease to local field mice living along the banks of the Hantan River. This confirmed that hantavirus is an ancient, silent biological hazard that uses local wildlife populations as a natural delivery system. In May 1993, the virus appeared in the American Southwest. A cluster of young, healthy Navajo Nation members suddenly died from rapid lung failure. Researchers struggled to find a cause until Navajo tribal elders identified an ecological pattern linked to the heavy rains of an El Niño. The chain reaction is straightforward. Unusually heavy rains lead to a bumper crop of pine nuts. This provides an endless food supply, causing the local mouse population to explode, and with it, the risk of human exposure. This is a global threat that often goes undetected. Studies in India, for example, found hantavirus antibodies in 4% of the general population, suggesting thousands of people have been exposed without knowing it. Ultimately, global weather patterns act as the trigger, determining when and where these rodent populations will surge and spill over into the human world. Historically, hantavirus followed a strict biological rule. It only moved from rodents to humans. It lacked the ability to spread from one person to another. That rule changed during a 1996 outbreak in Argentina. This event identified the Andes strain, the only version of the virus capable of human-to-human transmission. This mutation is what reached the 2026 cruise ship. Before boarding, the Dutch couple had visited a landfill on a birdwatching tour, unknowingly contracting the Andes strain from the local rat population. This created a massive, high-stakes epidemiological crisis. A virus that kills half its victims found a way to transmit between humans inside a tightly packed, closed environment. With a human-to-human strain now documented on a cruise ship, is the world at risk of a new global pandemic? Current data suggests the answer is no. This virus has a significant biological limitation. It cannot travel through the air like COVID or the flu. To spread, it requires prolonged, intimate physical contact or direct exposure to bodily fluids. The window for transmission is also incredibly small. An infected person is typically only contagious for about 24 hours at the very start of their symptoms. These biological constraints, the lack of airborne spread and the narrow window of contagion, are the primary reasons the Andes strain remains a localized threat, rather than a widespread pandemic. However, the risk to individuals is rising. This climate data shows an intensifying El Niño, which will likely trigger a surge in rodent populations across several continents. You can protect yourself by sealing entry points in your home and properly disposing of waste. If you are entering dusty or abandoned spaces where mice may live, always wear gloves and an N95 mask. Hantavirus has existed in the shadows for decades. In the absence of a vaccine or a cure, our most effective defense is simply being aware